Today on an all-new Dr. Phil.
My daughter Kendall is beyond untrustworthy.
She lies all the time about anything and everything.
They claim their daughter
Go away before I lose my marbles.
is ruining their lives with accusations
She said you threw her against the wall and choked her, did you?
No.
and lies.
She just kept repeating, I can't go back to Dad's house after everything that has happened. And I was like, what do you mean? What has happened?
I'm under another CPS investigation for allegedly molesting my daughter. Completely false.
Everyone thinks I'm lying.
Today's going to be a changing day in your life. You've never had anybody working harder to bring you to the threshold of change than right now. How are you?
Nice to meet you.
Bill, how you doing?
Brent, nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Listen, I wanted to just talk to you guys for a few seconds before we get out there because I'm concerned about the history here between you guys that predicts what might be a problem once we get out there. Now, you guys have been at odds for a long time. You say you're doing better now in terms of co-parenting,
Absolutely.
right?
Right.
But we got the tail wagging the dog here, okay? I mean, Kendall had a divide and conquer strategy that's worked very well, right? You're going to have to really stand your ground here because she has weaponized her lies. Do you actually think he's molested your daughter?
No. But as a mom, you want to be the advocate for your child. But given her history, you just can't believe anything she says.
I'm going to try to get her to recognize that she thinks there's power in accusation, but there's actually paralysis in accusation unless you keep putting buts in your sentences. No, I don't believe her, but no, I don't think you did, but
Right.
But you got to decide either she's lying or she's not. And there are so many inconsistencies throughout here. If she's telling the truth, she's schizophrenic because she doesn't know her story changes from one time
Right.
to the next. Even
Right.
her sister will tell you that.
Right.
All right. Now, before I walk out to the stage with Brent and Jill, let's hear what they went through during their divorce. Take a look at this.
My life with Brent was really bad. Brent was angry, uptight, a yeller, very strict with the kids.
Being married to Jill, it was just not a happy environment. I can take a lot, but there was several incidents of infidelity. At one point, I had to hire a private investigator because she would take off and disappear overnight. I ended up catching her red-handed. Jill even cheated on me with her current husband.
During the divorce, Brent was obsessed. He wanted to know who I was with, who I was dating, who was at my house. He got a key, not authorized by me, and would come in my house when I wasn't home. My ex-husband, Brent, would tell Kendall things that a parent should never tell their children. Kendall would say things to me like, you spent all the money and you cheated on Dad. That's why you got divorced.
Her mom, Jill, had stated things to her that I'm not a good person, I'm abusive.
Made me feel like a horrible mom and angry because it's just not the case. Brent wanted to alienate me as a parent. She'd come home from weekends at her dad's. She would reply with, what happens at Dad's house is none of your business.
The past few years, she's using drugs, she's hanging out in the wrong groups, she's flunking out of school.
She is defiant, lots of attitude. My 14-year-old daughter has turned everyone's life upside down. My daughter has accused me and other family members of beating her. She has accused her father of busting her lip.
Now she's leveled even sexual accusations against me.
It is a complete mess. I just want to ask Dr. Phil, is my daughter acting out now because of the divorce with her father?
Yes, she is acting out because of the divorce between you two, as many children do. And when it did happen, you guys had a lot of unfinished emotional business, right? I mean, when you divorced, it wasn't like, bye.
Right.
You still had warfare going on after that, true?
Very true, yes.
And how did she get caught up in the middle of that?
I feel I tried to shield her as much as I could, at least on my side of things, but I'm sure she did hear many conversations of contention between Jill and I at either household when we were going through a lot of this, initially that first year.
Didn't you talk to her about it some?
When Kendall would bring something up to me, I would at least say something back to her, but I didn't, I wanted her to feel like she was heard, but I didn't go into depth on things.
Well, her being heard's not you talking. You talking is you being heard. And from what she's telling us, you vented to her and she heard things from you about her mother.
No, that's not correct.
Okay, so, and I don't believe anything she says, so.
There were times, Dr. Phil, where she would come over to my house and she would say, "Hey, Dad, such and such bothers me. This is going on." And then I would allow her to have her moment to speak and offer some advice if I could. If it was something that was appropriate where I had to at least answer a question, I would answer it. But I tried to keep it at her age level as best as I could and make it as vague as possible. And a lot of times my response back to her was, "Well, kiddo, the best thing you can do is maybe talk to your mom about that. And that's her household. You got to work through those things over there. And it's not my place to get involved."
And that wasn't your experience of what was happening over there, right?
No.
If that's all that was happening, how did she know what she knew?
Right. Just if I'm making conversation, how was your weekend? What'd you do with your dad? Well, what happens at Dad's house is Dad business. But yet he would call my house and even ask questions as to what I'm making for dinner.
Was he using her to monitor you?
Yeah.
And how do you know that?
Just by the one side of the conversation that I would hear. And then he would tell me, "I know what goes on over there." My older daughter, Lindsay, she eventually stopped going there because of the divide and the tension.
And were you involved with someone else soon after this divorce?
Yes.
Or while it was pending?
Yes, we both were.
No, that's not correct, Dr. Phil.
Do we need to go back in there and have another conversation?
No.
Because I want the facts. Don't you do what your daughter's doing by becoming spin doctors. I need to know what she's been through and what she has experienced. And if she's been the rope in a tug of war of this divorce, and she has been exposed to adult issues as a child, and been used as a pawn in a power game, been used as a spy, as someone to gather and report information back and forth, as she says, then I need to know that. Because I need to know whether or not she has been emotionally involved in adult issues to the point that she felt responsibility and felt helpless and didn't know what was going to happen. And that's what she's telling us. She's telling us, and you're telling us, that she was saying things to you that could only come from him. And because I don't believe anything she says, because she has such a history of fabrication, that I only listen to things that are corroborated by someone independent of her. And you're telling me that she knew things that she could only get from him, that she was commentating about your relationship with Anthony, and the inappropriateness of that, et cetera, that a 9-year-old doesn't generate unless they've been coached about that.
Right.
And vice versa. That both of you were commentating about adult issues with her. Was that going on or was it not?
I would think with both parties to some extent.
When we went to court, I felt so caught. I felt so stuck for so long, and that's why I asked for the court-appointed advocate. I said, don't listen to me, don't listen to him, get somebody completely separate. And even that person said that he and his wife engaged in alienating behaviors for me. Like, she's my child, I'll do anything for her. And all I want to do is be her mom and be the best mom I can be. That's what it's been from day one. And I may not be perfect, but right now, we just have to grab the mess and try the hardest that we can to fix it. And that's why I'm here. I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I'm just saying that there has been independent people who have said that he alienated her from me.
Do you both agree that she was in emotional turmoil because of unfinished emotional business and warfare between the two of you at the time?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, coming up, we're going to meet Jill's husband, Anthony, and her older daughter, Lindsay. And we're going to talk about Kendall's first big accusation against the family, an accusation that ended with Dad Brent calling CPS. We'll be right back.
Kendall told Brent, I punched her in the face.
My sister told her dad that I'd choked her.
And that I threatened to her up.
We all got together to sit down and discuss what had taken place.
Anthony slammed his hands down on the table and started screaming at my dad.
My wife was smart enough to shake me out of it. We called the police. Since my divorce with Jill, I've remarried. My ex-wife Jill has remarried to a guy named Anthony.
My ex-husband, Brent, has a problem with black people and with cops. And my husband is both. He has called me a fat, loving.
I have found questionable things about his character without getting to know him, but seeing his actions. He was the head of internal affairs for his police department where my now ex-wife worked, and he was courting her. Well, I was still married to her.
I do think Brent's a bully. He's met his match, or at least he found someone who's not afraid of him.
Well, Jill and her ex-husband Brent say their 14-year-old daughter Kendall failed out of school, smokes marijuana, and has falsely accused family members of abuse. Now, Jill's current husband Anthony and daughter Lindsay say Kendall is a troublemaker, and she plays fast and loose with the truth. Now, Kendall's first accusation against the family, well, it was that she was beaten. Here are their various versions of that event.
2.5 years ago, we were all planning on going to a basketball game together. Kendall and I got into a fight. Kendall was screaming at me, and she wouldn't let me out of my room, so I just pushed her to the side.
I told Kendall she needed to do her chores before we went to the game.
I had a very short amount of time to complete all of it. My mom wanted me to bleach the baseboards, fold a bunch of towels, clean the bathroom. Oh, and she told me to do the cat box.
She was being defiant. It was like that. Like, get out of the truck, come on.
She was beating me with the closed side of her fist on my shoulder and on the side of my leg.
And then we got in the car and we're driving to the game.
Kendall started yelling at her mother at the top of her lungs. I immediately pulled the truck over, hit the brakes, and I told Kendall that if you ever speak to your mother again that way or any other adult, I'll personally spank your ass myself.
Anthony started screaming at me saying, I'm gonna beat the out of you.
A few days later, a bomb dropped.
My sister told her dad that I'd choked her.
She told Brent, I punched her in the face.
And then that I threatened to her up.
Kendall told me her side of the story the day they went to the basketball game. I was concerned. We all got together to sit down and discuss what had taken place.
Brent was being a complete jerk and believed every word that Kendall said.
Anthony started to interrupt her, and I just stuck my hand up and said, hey, let her finish.
And he started screaming at my dad.
He stood up, slammed his hands down on the table and said, you want to go, I'll beat your dude. I was ready to go right back at him, but my wife was smart enough to shake me out of it, grab me, and we went outside, called the police. Kendall actually jumped up from her chair and ran out the front door. I did have orders of protection placed against her half-sister Lindsay and her stepdad Anthony.
I was infuriated.
Kendall had told the police that I choked her and held her up against a wall. That never happened, and in my eyes, Kendall's a pathological liar.
Well, thank both of you for being here. I appreciate it. And I think that this has gotten really dangerous with this child making accusations that could have profound effects on a lot of adults here. We're in an era of guilt by accusation. We always have heard about guilt by association. You roll with pigs, you're going to get muddy. We've known that for a long time, but we're kind of in a jump to conclusion guilt by accusation situation now, and she has actually, what I referred to earlier, is weaponized her lies. She knows what to say to get courts involved, police involved, restraining orders involved, and that sort of thing. And I don't want that to happen, and I want to give her some relief in the situation as well. And she's accused you, Anthony, of threatening her and making terroristic threats and going to blank her up and that sort of thing. Nobody else reports that, but she reports that.
Yes, sir.
And that did not happen.
No, sir.
And nobody else says that happened, only she says that happened. And at the time, you said you didn't know what to believe, right?
Correct. At that point, she hadn't done anything like this, so I took her at her word. She was 10 years old, 11 years old, and she hadn't given me any reason to not believe her. Then, of course, when things kind of went south, when we all had a meeting, too, that lended some credibility to her statement. So the first time I did take her at her word. Since then, I've come to realize that not everything, and mostly...
Yeah, when it was your turn in the barrel, then all of a sudden you thought, this
seems to be establishing a pattern, so...
Yeah, as soon as you're in the crosshairs, then you go, well, maybe she's not so honest here. She said you choked her.
Yeah.
Threw her against the wall and choked her. Did you?
No, it never happened, and that she lied about it.
Well, Anthony, you're kind of new onto this scene, certainly new as compared to the biological parents here. What do you think's going on with her?
You know, Dr. Phil, it's probably a combination of things. I think that in the beginning, when the marriage was coming to an end, you know, I think Kendall was in this tug of war between parties to basically one party wanted to win her over from the other. I think she was told a lot of things, and she was exposed to a lot of things that she should not have been. Told a lot of things that only adults should be talking about, but not to 10 and 11-year-old children. I think that has really messed up her brain, and it has, because it hasn't been corrected over the years, she's still in that same stage of mind, that same frame of mind, in that same mode of thinking. And she hasn't been deprogrammed to say, okay, we're wrong, we shouldn't have done that, now let's start to take some steps to correct our mistakes.
Has she changed in your experience from a sister standpoint?
Like recently or since the divorce?
Well, since the divorce.
Yes.
How did she change?
She's become she's really rude now. She's angry all the time. We get into fights more often about stupid things.
She said you choked her.
Yeah.
Threw her against the wall and choked her. Did you?
No. Yesterday, actually, she finally admitted that it never happened and that she lied about it.
Yeah. So Anthony's right. There was a change point. And I've said I thought she was really caught up in having adult issues forced on her. Mm-hmm. And, you know, when there's no more stressful situation to be in than to be held responsible for things you don't control. And children really have a way of holding themselves responsible for things that are going on. I mean, if a family is breaking up, if mom and dad are breaking up, kids really do figure out how it's their fault. I mean, they'll go back in their room and say, well, if I was a better kid, maybe they wouldn't be fighting. If I was, less trouble, if I maybe did better in school, or if I didn't make so much noise or create so much havoc, maybe they would not be at each other. They figure out how it's their fault, and then when it does fall apart, they blame themselves. And then if they start getting politicked by each side, then when they're with you, they'll feel guilty because they feel they're betraying you.
Right.
And then when they're with you, they'll feel guilty because they're betraying you. So there's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. And when you're 9 years old, emotionally, you're not very evolved. And what I'm seeing in her now is an emotional age of about 9 years old. I mean, when you look at emotional development and emotional problem-solving skills and emotional reactivity, it appears that she's arrested at about 9 years of age. She has not evolved on because of trauma. And when was she diagnosed with ADHD?
17.
April of 2017.
And she was prescribed medication for that?
Yes.
And how did she change when she went on that medication?
Oh, it did not go well. It made her very angry and rage when she would come off the medication, so we stopped that.
Just, by the way, I certainly can't diagnose her, and I've not even met her at this point. But when I did practice, my specialty was brain and central nervous system, and I see absolutely no signs that this child is ADHD. And giving her those medications is like throwing gas on a fire.
Yes,
saw that.
We saw that firsthand.
Yeah, that's just, yeah. Okay, coming up, I'm going to take a closer look at the accusation number 2 that involved a book the size of Harry Potter, plus accusation number 3, which has caused complete chaos within this family. We'll be right back.
Jill and I decided to send Kendall to go live with some relatives for the remainder of the school year.
My relatives called and wanted to send Kendall back home. Then the next bomb dropped. Kendall got on the phone and was crying. I can't go back there. I can't go back to Dad's house after everything that has happened. And I was like, what do you mean? What has happened?
About 6 months after Kendall's first accusation, she was at it again.
This time it was against me.
Kendall called me from school and she was frantic. I immediately went to Kendall's school and the police showed up.
My dad got angry at me and he threw a book and 2 pairs of Converse at me. The shoes hit me in the corner of my eye. He picked up the book and he threw it at me and it hit me in the lip and it busted my lip open.
Kendall even showed us the book and the page where there was blood on it.
I thought to myself, well, one, he's finally got so pissed off that he threw something at her, or this just didn't happen.
And we're talking about a book. We're talking about a big book. And this supposedly was thrown at her and hit her in the mouth, right?
That's her story.
Well, that was her story, and that was investigated.
Correct.
And forensically, they found some inconsistencies with that allegation, correct? And what were those inconsistencies?
When she stated that I hit her in the face with the book, the blood splattered onto the book when it made contact, and that's why she had the fat, bloody lip. When they opened up the book and saw the blood that was on there, they could clearly tell it had been smeared onto the book. It wasn't blood splatter. It was my wife.
Smeared.
Yeah, my wife actually walked in the night before all this blew up, after this had taken place, and noticed that she was wiping blood on the book, but didn't think anything of it until the next morning when everything went down at school and then CPS got involved. Then we realized, okay, she was basically setting up, I'm going to wipe blood on the book, then I'm going to go to CPS, I'm going to go to school, report it, set him up that he threw the book at me, and go from there.
Then Kendall made accusation number 3. She now claims that the biological father, Brent, molested her.
It just seemed to be getting worse and worse.
Jill and I decided to send Kendall to go live with some relatives for the remainder of the school year, get her a new environment.
When she moved in with the relatives, I have to say that I didn't feel very confident that she would be there long.
My relatives called and wanted to send Kendall back home.
Jill did have a conversation with her and said, if you come back, you're living with your dad, you're going to go to his high school in his district, you're going to ROTC, and you will live with him full-time under his rules.
When Kendall heard that information or understood what the living conditions were going to be, it was time for another meltdown and another smokescreen.
Then the next bomb dropped. Kendall got on the phone and was crying. She just kept repeating, I can't go back there. I can't go back to Dad's house after everything that has happened. And I was like, what do you mean? What has happened? Kendall said that her father would rub up against her when they were walking through a doorway or look at her while she was in the shower. So I was disgusted.
I'm still in shock and heartbroken. The bottom line on these accusations of molestation, they're completely false. Now I'm under another CPS investigation for allegedly molesting my daughter.
Now, Brent, I've always said that the most dangerous lie is the one that has a kernel of truth. A kernel of truth. Can you think of or point to a situation where you have inadvertently walked into the room or brushed up against her or something that she could point to, reframe, or reference in some way to spin as inappropriate?
Certainly to spin. She's my daughter, so of course when she walks through a door, I'll put my hand on her back as she walks through the door. When I go a week without seeing her, her and I, up until recently, had a great relationship, so I'm excited to see her. I give her a hug. I'll give her a kiss on the forehead now that she's older. When she was littler, I used to give her a kiss on the cheek or on a kiss on the mouth. The shower, she locks her bathroom door, and blares the music as loud as she possibly can to where we can hear it in the living room. And I've never once walked into the actual bathroom itself. My wife can actually hear me because she'll be like, oh, can you go tell her to turn it down? I'll walk around the corner. It's right there in our living room, and I'll knock on the door, and you can hear me knocking. You got 5 more minutes. You've been in there for 20 minutes. Let's get the music turned down. Never once walked in on Kendall. I've always knocked at the door, let her know what she needed to have done, and my wife can hear me knocking and having a conversation through the door. I give Kendall her space in her bedroom. Obviously, it's my bedroom. I own the house. So if I need to come in, but I always knock first. Hey, are you know, especially if she just got out of a shower or if I think she's changing, I always knock first. But I give her that space, especially now that she's older, to refrain from doing anything that would be age inappropriate. Like I said, when she was 5, I would kiss her on the mouth or I'd kiss her on the cheek. We don't do that anymore at 14. I'll give her a kiss on the forehead. I give her a hug. So, I mean, anything I've done, I'm sure she could twist, but I feel everything's been very age appropriate, as to still show affection as a father, but not to cross a line.
And why do you think she chose this particular lie to tell instead of something else?
Honestly, I'm still trying to process a lot of it. I'm heartbroken. I'm obviously pretty mad at her. I wanted to distance myself.
Closed captioning provided by Kendall claims that her biological father, Brent, molested her. Why do you think she chose this particular lie to tell instead of something else?
The only thing I can think of is she's realized that the physical abuse ones get unfounded, so it's time to up her game. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of is she's done 2 physical abuse claims, 3 if you count when she was in California. You know, like, oh, I don't feel safe here. I think she just kind of realized, well, that jig is up. Everybody's figured that out, so I've got to up my game now to something more drastic. 3 different claims at 3 different households for physical abuse, so now it just seems like it's the next course of...
And did you talk to her about this when she made this allegation?
I have not.
Haven't had a word of conversation.
I have not talked to her since the day she called me. Honestly, I'm still trying to process a lot of it. It's been about a month. I never thought I would even have to be in the situation to have to defend or just defend anything like that as far as allegations go. I'm heartbroken. I'm obviously pretty mad at her. And I'm honestly still in shock. Some days I still wake up and I'm think, wow, I've told my wife, wow, I can't even believe that I'm in this environment, that this is happening. So until this has been cleared and we've gone through the channels with CPS and hopefully getting help from you, Dr. Phil, I wanted to distance myself and not agitate the situation, not get involved, not create any more environment that she could level any more accusations against me. So my communication's been strictly with her since then.
Mm-hmm. And this supposedly started when?
The story was what, fifth grade? 4th grade?
The first time she mentioned it, it sounded like it was just like November, December. But then when she mentioned it again, she said 5th grade. But when she makes things up, it's usually age 5 or 5th grade or has something to do with 5. So that's kind of when I was like, ding, like this didn't happen.
And
well, here's what she said about it. The sexual abuse happened when I was 9 or 10, and it was just inappropriate touching and not like rape. My door was taken off, and my dad would come in daily when I was changing. It happened several times over the course of a few years. I have photos to send regarding the abuse. I'll explain them later. Well, she never sent the photos, and later she said she must have deleted them. CPS came to my relative's house in California. They asked me basic questions. I answered the questions. And then I went into detail about my dad, and the CPS workers thanked me for my time and told them I had to go because I had a nail appointment that day at 4:30 and I could not miss it. Okay, so she says this started happening when she was 9, but Lindsay, she's told you that she says it actually started happening in early when? 18, 19?
Mm-hmm. She said it happened like right before she left.
That's when it started happening.
Not in 5th grade.
No.
She says that she's saying here to us that it happened in the started happening in the 5th grade and went for 4 years. And so she first claimed it began at the age of 9, later said it began before leaving for California. Then she says, actually it was early 2019, and she mistakenly thought Brent was put in prison.
I haven't even seen her in 2019 because she's been in California. Oh, one time that one weekend. That's right, the one weekend in February. Which my wife was there the entire time. So.
And you thought it was odd that she was upset that he was in prison?
Yes, I did.
Because?
If he actually did it, why would she be so upset? In my head, if someone did that to me, I would want them to be put in prison. I would want them to like sit and ponder what they did.
Yeah.
I just don't understand why she would be so upset and crying and frantic when she found out, or when she thought he was in prison. If he did it to her, it just didn't make any sense to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, she says it happened daily. Then she says it happened a few times throughout the years. Then she said that you touched her back in the shower. In the shower.
Maybe when she was 3. I was giving her a bath.
Then she says it started in 2019. And you were bothered by these inconsistencies with her telling you this story.
Yes, I was.
Did you tell her it was okay to smoke marijuana?
No.
You have told me, look, kids are going to be kids, they're going to drink, they're going to do drugs. I just don't want it in my house, and I don't want her doing the hard stuff.
You're not a big fan of Brent's.
No, not really.
I mean, just to be honest.
To be honest, no.
You're not a big fan of his, but not being a big fan of his doesn't mean you think he's molested your sister.
I do not think he has at all. I do not think so.
Why not?
There have been so many inconsistencies in all of her stories, and she made those false allegations against me a few years back. And I lived with him for 10 years of my life. He's always been really respectful, knocking on doors, everything. I don't think he did it. Her story doesn't match up. She lied about me slamming her up against a wall and choking her. It doesn't. And she always wanted to go be at her dad's house all the time. She hated it when she lived with my mom and I. She hated it. So in my head, why would she want to go live with her dad if all of this was happening throughout the years?
Well, are you uncomfortable being around her?
Yes, sir.
And what's your fear?
My fear is, I called this 2 years ago. I said to my wife that, after the allegations or the lies that Kendall had told some years ago, that we have to prepare ourselves for what's next. It could be a hurricane that comes down next against me, and I can't afford to have that happen again. I can't afford to have him come to my job again. I can't afford to be investigated again. I can't afford to have people going to my human resources department again based off of lies that she's told someone, and they've gone to go and investigate it to try to get me in trouble. So my fear was 2 years ago that she would say something like this about me. So 2 years ago, I began the distancing process between me and Kendall.
Just self-preservation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And, that's what I was saying earlier. She's weaponized this to the point where she thinks she's getting power, but in fact, it's isolation and paralysis. I mean, she's actually putting herself over here. Now, did you tell her it was okay to smoke marijuana?
No, absolutely not. The conversation I had with Kendall, when I did find out that there was some of that going on, was, I don't like it. You shouldn't be touching any kind of drugs. You shouldn't be involved in any kind of drugs. However, I had to have a candid conversation with her. Look, Kendall, I can't control what you do at school. you're at that age now that if you're going to sneak into the bathroom, you're going to sneak in the bathroom and you're going to do your drugs. But these are the repercussions of doing those type of things. And they will never come into my house. If I find them, they go in the trash can, period, end of story. And if you get involved in drugs, here's what your path in life is going to be. Trying to have one of those, look, I know I can't be with her 8 hours a day in school. If she's going to sneak off with her friends, she's going to do it as much as I don't like it. But I wanted to at least prepare her that these are the repercussions when you get into drugs. Prison time, overdosing, health concerns. And so we had many of those conversations when we had those discussions.
But when you and I talk, you have told me, look, kids are going to be kids, they're going to drink, they're going to do drugs. I just don't want it in my house, and I don't want her doing the hard stuff.
Yeah.
But with a child like her, you can't take that approach. No, you're not doing drugs. Not now, not ever. Not under my roof, not under your mom's roof, nobody's roof, not at school, nothing.
And I've told her, I don't want you doing it. That's my way. But I also...
But you give her an inch, she'll take 2 miles.
I don't want you doing it.
The problem with this right now is too much inconsistency with parenting styles, things of that nature. You can't give her an inch, like Jill said. You know, no matter where she goes, it takes a village to raise a child. Everybody's got to be on the same page and give her the same consequences, and she needs to understand no matter where she goes, this is inappropriate and not acceptable.
The whole idea of discipline is that they internalize the discipline and apply it when you're not there. That's the whole point of discipline. We've been talking about her, but we're going to meet her next. Kendall has made some serious accusations against her father, Brent, and I have some serious questions for her. But because I've never let a potential victim be in the same room with their alleged abuser, I'm going to have to ask Brent to leave while she comes out here. So I'm going to excuse him, bring her out here, talk to her, and then we'll bring you back. But we're going to take a break and bring her out, excuse you while she's here. We'll be right back.
What's important is that everyone knows the truth. My dad's a very angry person. I can't go back to live with my dad because he molested me. It happened countless times.
Closed captioning provided by... Well, we're out of time for today, and I have yet to start interviewing 14-year-old Kendall. I want to hear from her mouth why she made these serious accusations against her family. Here's a preview. You don't want to miss this, and I must say that Kendall has legitimate complaints because she has been caught up in the nasty crossfire and power struggle of a divorce. However, we have to deal with the reality that her lies are dangerous because these adults, well, they're just frankly no longer willing to take the risk of subjecting themselves to her toxic allegations. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and at drphil.com. And if you're a fan of podcasts, subscribe to mine called Fill in the Blanks. I also have a new podcast series, Analysis of Murder by Dr. Phil. We'll see you next time.